What if wisdom isn't a destination, but a practice of questions that never end? In a world chasing certainty, Socrates offers a counterintuitive guide: doubt as a craft, not a drawback. Socrates moved through Athens with a quiet intensity. He didn't inventory facts, he unsettled them. He didn't claim to know better than others. He claimed to know that knowledge is fragile, and that the strongest stance is a willingness to revise it. The three lessons that emerge from his life aren't about grand theories. They're about how to live with heat under pressure, how to keep your thinking honest when the room grows loud, and how to turn fear of being wrong into a discipline of being honest. Lesson 1 is simple in idea, difficult in practice. Ask better questions, not louder answers. The Socratic method isn't a lecture hall ritual, it's a workbench for courage. Imagine a room where someone insists virtue is a single thing: courage, wisdom, piety, or justice. Socrates would not accept the label. Instead, he asked for the definition of virtue itself, then the definition behind that, and so on, until the scaffolding of belief reveals its own gaps. The aim isn't to win an argument, but to illuminate the unseen corners of a belief. When you question softly but relentlessly, beliefs shift, not because you defeated someone, but because you expose the architecture of a claim. In a modern context, this means leadership that invites critique, friendships that welcome discomfort, and decisions shaped by a procedure of proof rather than a bravado of certainty. The power of a good question is in its capacity to move you from the surface of an idea to the depths where the idea wants to live or die. Lesson 2 is the examined life. Not a diary of mood, Socrates claimed that an unexamined life is not worth living. And the claim rings with a paradox. To examine your life is to risk making yourself fallible in the eyes of others. Yet the discipline isn't about cynicism toward yourself. It's about honest calibration. To examine means to test your motives against your actions, to surface the hidden reasons you do what you do, and to decide whether those reasons deserve your allegiance. The turning point in his story isn't his charisma or his cleverness. It's the choice to stay with the process when it led to his conviction and death. He chose to live in tension with the crowd rather than bend to popularity. The result wasn't a prescription for perfection, but a habit of continuous alignment. A life that looks at what it loves and asks whether what it loves serves a larger good. In contemporary terms, the examined life becomes a compass for purpose in work, in family, in community, an ongoing audit that refuses to outsource meaning to momentum or tradition. Lesson 3 is perhaps the subtlest, the virtue of not knowing, and the discipline of inquiry it births. Socrates didn't pretend to know everything. He knew that certainty is a magnet for arrogance. He welcomed doubt as a method, not as a disease. The famous line, often simplified, becomes a doorway when understood through practice. I know that I know nothing. This isn't humility as passivity. It is humility as rigor. It means choosing questions over easy conclusions, choosing open dialogue over the illusion of final answers, and choosing the courage to revise when new evidence or perspective arrives. Doubt isn't the end of wisdom. It is the engine. When you allow yourself to be wrong, you don't weaken your voice, you refine it. In a modern setting, this translates into teams that test ideas in the open, science that refuses to bow to dogma, and a life in which personal growth requires the willingness to change your mind. The twist in Socrates' tale isn't that he made every question land with certainty. It's that his life demonstrated a strange form of moral bravery. The courage to pursue truth, even if the pursuit costs you everything you have. He showed that a mind trained to question remains vivid long, and that a society's health rests on citizens who refuse to mistake confident rhetoric for true understanding. The more he questioned, the more his city felt the ache of unresolved questions. And yet his manner of living quiet, stubborn, lucid became a blueprint that outlived his life. The turning point for us is recognizing that the value of this method isn't measured by applause, but by persistence. The persistence to keep asking, to keep testing, to keep refining your beliefs in the face of contradiction. So, what do these 3 lessons look like when you carry them into everyday life? First, cultivate questions with intention. When a problem appears, resist the impulse to flatten it into a quick answer. Instead, map the question, expose the assumptions behind it, and test those assumptions against lived reality. Second, examine your life with steady devotion. Define your own standards of meaning and hold them up to your actions. If there's a gap, admit it and repair it. Not to prove a point, but to align your living with your deepest values. Third, embrace doubt as a tool, not a trap. Let uncertainty sharpen your thinking, not paralyze your progress. When you approach life with that trio, curiosity and disciplined doubt, you'll discover that wisdom isn't a treasure you reach, but a practice you practice. The question that remains isn't whether Socrates was right about every claim. It's whether his method can endure in a century that prizes speed over scrutiny, certainty over nuance, and certainty over dialogue. If we allow his example to alter how we think, not just what we think, then these 3 lessons become a map. Question carefully, live transparently, doubt generously. They don't promise salvation from error. They promise a sturdier, more honest way to live with error in the open air of inquiry. So I'll leave you with a prompt that isn't a trick, but a test. What question would you pose today that you're not prepared to answer tomorrow? If you can name that question, you've started the craft. If you can live with the tension it creates, you've started the life Socrates made possible, a life that grows through questions, remains honest under scrutiny, and refuses to surrender to certainty without a fight. In the end, the 3 life lessons from Socrates aren't relics. They're practice you can begin tonight. Ask better questions, examine your life, and welcome the discomfort of doubt as a sign that you're still listening to reality, rather than merely tallying your victories against it. What question will you begin with? Metadata block to follow. If that question is met with silence, you're already on the path. The path doesn't demand perfect answers. It asks for ongoing alignment between what you think, what you do, and what you admit you don't know. First, apply the first lesson in real time. Ask better questions, not louder answers. In a tense meeting, someone proclaims a decision as final. Instead of rallying more rhetoric, pose a few clarifying, non-defensive questions. What evidence would change your mind? What outcome would prove this choice is right or wrong? What risks are we ignoring? By reframing the moment as a shared inquiry, you reduce heat and reveal hidden assumptions. The room breathes, ideas loosen. You haven't won a debate. You've lengthened the tail of the arrow pointing toward truth. The habit compounds. Questions become procedures. Procedures become cultures. Cultures become resilience. Second, the examine life isn't a solitary ritual. It becomes a way of walking through the day with others. In relationships, it means naming what you want honestly, checking your actions against that claim, and apologizing when needed, not as a wound to pride, but as a repair to trust. It means choosing transparency over heroism, confession over clutching a convenient narrative. If your work demands loyalty to a standard, test that standard against lived outcomes. Are your promises mirrored by your behavior? Do your choices align with the values you profess? And where is the gap that needs tending? When you treat life as a steady audit rather than a final verdict, you move from defending yourself to improving yourself. Third, not knowing isn't a throne for fear, it's a doorway to growth. In a world of rapid change, certainty becomes a brittle shield. The discipline is not despair but curiosity. You invite revision. You test beliefs against new data. You welcome dissent as a tutor, not an enemy. This isn't about cynicism, it's about clarity. When you lead teams, Open the floor to contradictions, map the counterarguments, and reward the courage to change your mind when better reasoning arrives. The not knowing becomes a shared ground where progress happens. The twist is quiet. Skepticism isn't rebellion against truth. It's the engine that keeps truth from running dry. Socrates didn't seek to prove himself right. He sought to prove the path toward rightness is navigable. So the three lessons fuse into a practical stance. Stay curious enough to question, stay humble enough to adjust, stay brave enough to be honest about what you don't know. If you can live with that triad, you don't just think differently, you live differently. Now, with the day unfolding around you, what question will you ask first? Not as a test, but as a hinge that could swing your morning toward meaning. The rest, as they say, follows from your curiosity. Endlessly, the practice remains,